Governor Kathy Hochul, Mayor Zohran Mamdani, Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, Speaker Julie Lennon, and every single elected official who has risen to the occasion to fight for Dylan's release, including our federal representatives, Senator Schumer, Representative Dan Goldman, Nydia Velasquez, Adriano Espaillat, and every single other congressional member who has signed on to letters for his support. Today would not be possible without this amazing host, so I want to give a huge shout out to Reverend Jackie Lewis for allowing us to use her space. And you're going to hear from many speakers today. But first up, I want to welcome up to the mic, and please, just for decorum, do not rush, do not move. Everyone should be stationed where they're at this point. Don't fight camera people. So without further ado, join me in welcoming up to the mic, Dylan Lopez Contreras.
Para poder sacarme de esa situación tan fea que ha sido realmente. Estoy súper agradecido con todas las personas, desde quienes mandaban cartas, quienes hacían este tipo de pancartas tan bonitas, todo el que ha apoyado, no nada más a mí, también a muchos de mis compañeros allá adentro, ya que es súper como les digo, es súper feo estar allá adentro. Realmente he visto todo tipo de personas que realmente no merecíamos estar allá adentro, y todavía, por lo menos en mi caso, quiero seguir luchando por ellos, que es lo que hay que hacer. Realmente he estado aquí más que todo para agradecer a todos ustedes.
Dylan, I want to thank everybody who has put an effort in helping me get out of the very ugly situation I was in. So many people sending me messages and letters.
Remains one of the biggest imperatives, but also in some cases challenges for folks who choose not to work with the U.S. government.
I agree. I sit on the CISA, subcommittee here, and I'm very concerned about it. And I think our whole committee's been concerned about the assessment we have on offensive cyber, so we look forward to that. Finally, Director Radcliffe, thanks for you being here, and it's wonderful to see you. Thanks for our decade of friendship. I want to say that I've traveled significantly with the chairman to Latin America, and I want to say your stations throughout the Western Hemisphere are doing an outstanding job. Would you say that we're back on track countering great power rivals in the Western Hemisphere?
I would. Thank you for the compliments for the workforce that I'm privileged to lead. And I do think the President's policies in making the Western Hemisphere a priority are really clear. Obviously, the success of Operation Absolute Resolve. It's funny, Congressman, no one's talking about Venezuela because things are going so well in Venezuela. But it really shows the commitment that the President has to taking care of business for American interests in our own hemisphere. And it's not limited to Venezuela, it's throughout Central and South America. And I think that you'll continue to see continued progress with respect to that.
Thank you, and I thank all of you for your service to your country, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Before we dismiss, I'm going to ask all members of the audience, all members and staff to remain seated until the witnesses have cleared, giving them an opportunity to proceed to our closed setting, which we will reconvene at 11:30 to resume in HVC 304. With that said, please remain seated until the witnesses have cleared, and this proceeding is adjourned.
to socialize with people they work with. All of us, to a degree, socialize with our fellow employees. But again, people who have Down syndrome, spina bifida, I think their parents frequently worry what type of friends they're going to have when they're gone. These facilities provide those lifelong friendships that are so important. The next thing I'd like to address is soon we are going to be taking up a budget and begin to taking up appropriation bills for the year beginning September 1st. We also may be taking up some sort of bill dealing with the hostilities in Iran. Given that, I want to remind people we recently hit $39 trillion in debt in this country. We are borrowing about 25 or 26% of our budget. I think all of you back home ought to stop and think. Can you imagine what it's like borrowing 26% of your budget? I mean, it's just utterly reckless for anybody to do that in their life or in their business, but that's what we're doing right now. Right now, about 14% of your tax dollar that's sent to Washington goes to interest already. And obviously, that's the beginning of the downward spiral towards bankruptcy when 14% of your budget is on interest. So what I'm going to ask, I'm sure we are going to be asked to spend money on a supplemental for the war in Iran, and I'm prepared to do that. But I do ask leadership to step up to the plate and pass a reconciliation bill or appropriation bills that are a little more responsible than the irresponsible ones in the past. After all, if it's worthwhile to spend billions of dollars, tens of billions, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars in Iran, it's certainly worthwhile that maybe we don't reduce spending to cover all of that, but reduce spending to a degree. DOGE, which people have begun to forget about, pointed out the huge number of excessive employees in all government agencies. But in the Department of Defense right now, we still have just under 700,000 people who are non-uniformed personnel. In other words, people sitting in front of a computer for the Department of Defense. I don't think anybody can argue that that number is high. We reduced the number mildly by providing buyouts for people, and we reduced the number by putting in hiring freezes so that if people retire, they don't get replaced. But that only reduced the employment by $60,000 or $70,000, or 60 or 70,000 people. I think if you ask around, you will find people who know through their relatives or people in their apartment building or people in their church that there are still probably hundreds of thousands of people who are working there unnecessarily. And before the Department of Defense comes back with, or at the same time they come back with, requests for a supplemental to spend more money, I think it's important for the Department of Defense to come back and explain to us what they have done to reduce the number of employees there, and for the administration overall to look at the number of employees in all other agencies, as well as programs in other agencies, and say, this is what we have to cut if we're going to begin to fund the Iran war. I'm not even asking for a dollar for dollar or a dollar cut for every $2 spent. Maybe a dollar reduction for every $3 spent would be appropriate. But I hope they don't insult the next generation by just asking for additional spending. The next issue I'd like to address is one that Dr. Oz got in the paper for, and that is the transgender situation in this country. I frequently hear conservative commentators, Fox News in particular, who talk about boys and men's sports, and we shouldn't have boys and girls sports. We shouldn't have boys and girls sports. However, I think that kind of implies that if we solve that problem, we solve the transgender problem, and that is not true. Recent studies have shown a dramatic reduction in the number of people who claim to be transgender. I think for people like me, that is not a surprise at all, because I think a lot of people who are being transgender because they're egged on by psychiatrists or egged on by school counselors, or even more, egged on by popular culture as a way to find a peer group and as a way to kind of be, the cool rebel. But Dr. Oz has taken on the medical groups, including the American Psychiatric Association, who have been in favor of identifying people as transgender and even giving them puberty blockers, and worse, giving them surgeries before 18. Now, I don't know how anybody, any medical professional, anybody with a whit of common sense would give somebody any surgery before 25 years old, because you know that people change their mind about things. And obviously, if you have one of these dramatic surgeries and realize later you made a mistake, it's going to result in huge psychiatric problems. So I strongly encourage Dr. Oz to get more involved in this. I strongly encourage this body to lower their opinion of members of the American Psychiatric Association, because these people who have spent a long period of time in school apparently have a complete and utter lack of common sense, and one wonders why we are listening to them, or why we are required to give them money for their ridiculous efforts on behalf of early surgeries on transgenders. In any event, I hope that all conservative commentators, when they talk about the transgender thing, in addition to talking about the relatively tiny number of men who participate in women's sports, go after the psychiatrists and psychologists who are giving puberty blockers and even more, giving outright surgeries on our young people that I would bet in very, very many cases they will regret, and they will regret listening to the professionals who went to school at length for such a preposterous endeavor. The next thing I'd like to point out is I'd like to thank Congressman Owens for introducing a bill that we recently dealt with in the Education Committee. Over time, certainly in Minnesota, but across the country, we are finding shocking amounts of money being wasted on income transfer programs. And we found another one here. We are right now giving aid to students that may not even exist. And maybe some of that money winds up with colleges and universities towards tuition, but a lot of the money winds up with what we'll call ghost students, students that don't exist except for on paper, and somebody winds up stealing money that the government is printing. First of all, one more time, it gives a lesson as to why things ought to be handled on a state and local level, because I think state and local governments are going to be much quicker to pick up on the fact that they are being taken advantage of than the unwieldy federal government. But secondly, it is continuing a trend we have in this country of encouraging the crooks in society to take advantage of the federal government and get wildly rich. We are in this bill going to make it a much more difficult thing and require the government to look into this matter and into the students who are getting these aid payments, so things in one more program don't wind up completely out of control. And I strongly encourage this body to pare back on any of these programs that are fraught with fraud. I think a conclusion that ought to be dealt with once you get done looking at fraud for food stamps, or fraud for Medicaid, or fraud for earned income tax credit, is that if you let the federal government do anything, there'll be tons of fraud in it, and the less of these programs, the better. Doesn't mean that people can't be helped, but the people should be helped by either private charity, or they should be helped by state and local governments. My final thing I'm going to point out, and I recently had a meeting on this with the Vice President, but what I think is the biggest problem in the government today, which is further related to all these income transfer payments, is the fact that right now in this government, and really for the last 60 years, we have been penalizing couples who have children in wedlock. This has been a long time dream of getting rid of the nuclear family. It was Karl Marx's dream. It was Kate Millett, the mother of the Women's Studies Department, dream. Families without men. And all sorts of families can succeed. I certainly know many single parents who've done a fantastic job of raising their children. Nevertheless, as they work towards their goal of keeping men out of the family, it statistically overall does hurt the children to a degree. It's not something that we should be encouraging. I sit here and listen to hearings about educational achievement. I listen to hearings about crime problems, hearings about depression, hearings about drug use. And to a degree, I think the answer is never brought up in these hearings. The answer is stronger families. But if this government is going to pay give a $25,000 a year bonus or penalize somebody $25,000 a year for getting married before they have children, it is obviously, first of all, unfair on its face. We're grotesquely favoring one lifestyle over another lifestyle. And secondly, we are reducing the number of children who do have a mother and father at home. I strongly encourage Vice President Vance and President Trump to step forward and appoint some sort of committee or commission to recommend what we should do instead of dramatically penalizing couples who decide to get married. And I will point out, you're hurting the children, which is true. I think you're hurting the mothers, which is true. But according to expert sociologists like George Gilder, you're hurting the prospective husbands or fathers, because the way society is built up, the primary purpose of most men in the country is supposed to be to take care of their wives and children. And when you have the government, as an Indian immigrant friend of mine said, when you have the government marrying the woman, it kind of leaves the man out of the picture, and he loses what is supposed to be his natural purpose in life. So I strongly encourage Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Thune, and President Trump to establish some sort of committee in which we can look at all of these programs, and there are about 70 programs out there in which we penalize people for getting married. Pell Grants, it's much easier to get a college scholarship if you are a single parent than a married parent. Food stamps, low-income housing, earned income tax credit, daycare subsidies. Like I said, about 70 programs, and it looks to a certain extent the way they were put together, their design was to cause the breakdown of the American family. So I hope that is something that can be done over the next couple of months. I thought it would be done today, but I think the war in Iran is taking everybody's focus. But I would like to see us, by the time June rolls around, to have these committees or commissions at work preparing recommendations so we no longer exhibit this hatred that we apparently have in this country of people who decide to get married before they have children. Thank you very much. I'll yield the remainder of my time.
The gentleman yields. For what purpose? Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 3rd, 2025, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. And I rise today, Mr. Speaker, with a very special topic. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, because I am a liberated unbought, unbossed Democrat. I not only speak truth to power, I speak truth about power. You speak truth to power by simply saying, power, there's a problem. Let's solve it. Great thing to do. But when you speak truth about power, you say, power, there's a problem, and you're it. So today I'm going to speak truth about power. I'm going to do so because I will not allow the power that I'm to speak about to intimidate me. I insist on having the full benefit of my free speech rights, and I will take advantage of them. And if it should cost me, I will pay the price. But I plan to speak truth not only to power, but also speak truth about power. Today, I am going to embrace the topic that has caused a good deal of consternation in this Congress, a topic that many people would say it would be injudicious to embrace because of the consequences. But there comes a time when you have to take a stand. Consequences are things that have to be considered. But when it comes to my country, and when it comes to the American consumer, I'm willing to take those consequences on. I'm willing to do what I believe to be not only the right thing, but the righteous thing. So today, I will embrace the topic, why the crypto industry is spending mega millions of dollars to control Congress. Why is the crypto industry spending mega millions of dollars to control Congress? Not to have debates in Congress, not to allow the American people to hear all sides of issues, but to control Congress to the extent that but one side is going to be presented. So today I stand and I speak for all of those people who agree with me. I don't speak for people associated with any party. I don't speak with people associated with any caucus. I speak for everybody that agrees with me, and there are a good many. Not all will say what I say, but they agree with me. And by the way, I say what I say, and I don't expect others to say what I say, because I think I'm uniquely qualified to say what I say. I sit on the Financial Services Committee. I have chaired the subcommittee on oversight and investigations for financial services. And I'm proud to say that I've lived under the leadership of the Honorable Barney Frank and the Honorable Maxine Waters. And I'm proud to say that at some point, I believe that we will have the leadership on that committee again. And this is why the crypto industry is so concerned about members who might take the position that I take. So the topic again, why the crypto industry is spending mega millions of dollars to control Congress. Well, let's start with what is actually happening right now in Congress. The Congress is the House and the Senate. We are in the House of Representatives, but it's the House and the Senate. The Senate has passed a piece of legislation that deals with housing. It is styled the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. And I have a section-by-section breakdown. I'm not going to go through every section, but I can tell you that there is language in here that, if implemented, will be of great benefit to people in the area of housing, people who are in need of housing, people who are in need of a place to call home. There's language in here that I support. But I also want you to know that in this bill that deals with housing, the crypto industry decided that something was germane that I totally, absolutely, and completely disagree with. The crypto industry decided that over near the very end of the bill, on the last page of the document that I have, after having topics styled rental assistance demonstration program, increasing housing in opportunity zones, Whole Home Repairs Act, and many other things that are beneficial. The crypto industry, this is on the very last page of the summary that I have. The crypto industry found reason to believe that what I'm about to articulate is germane. I don't think it's germane, but it's in the bill. The crypto industry has included language in Section 1001, Section 1001, styled central bank digital currency. Crypto industry, central bank legislation in a housing bill. And here's what it would do. This section pauses the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency. Pauses for approximately 5 years. Pauses it. Well, that pause is not good enough for some people. There are some people who want a permanent ban on a central bank issuing a digital currency. Now, I have to give some edification to many people who are listening. Let's start with this. Right now, if you desire to, you can transfer with crypto dollars, cryptocurrency, I should say, money from one person to another without it going through any other entity or going to any other person. One person to another without going to any other person. Friends, that kind of transference is beneficial in many ways to many people. Some people who would do dastardly deeds are indeed enthralled with this methodology. They're enthralled with it because when they can transfer from one person to another, if they want to transfer funds to someone engaging in some sort of illicit activity, they can make that transfer and remain anonymous. There is something called pseudo-anonymous. They are pseudo-anonymous. They have pseudo-anonymous positions that allow them to be secreted within the transaction. It's called pseudonymity. They have pseudonymity. Well, this pseudonymity allows people to do dastardly things and not be recognized for their dastardly deeds. It makes it very difficult to catch them. For example, someone who wants to send money to a terrorist organization, you can do this anonymously. You have pseudonymity. Also, you might recall some time ago, not so long ago, there was a group of people, maybe one person, I'm not sure, who wanted to extort money from a very notable family. And they wanted that money to be transferred in crypto dollars, crypto fashion, digital currency. They wanted it to be transferred digitally because they knew that it would prevent them from being caught. Now, maybe they would be caught. Maybe there's some super means of spying and finding out. But their chances of being caught were very slim if they could have the money transferred from one person to another, not go through a central bank, and as a result, claim their ill-gotten gains, go off into the world unknown to people as the criminals they would be. It's great for those persons who want to extort money, this direct transfer of money from one person to another. Now, it would be against the law to do this, but it would also be up to the law to find some means by which you can prevent this, or you can at least arrest the people who do this. But with this pseudonymity, they have the ability to do this and not be caught. If they are caught, it would be very difficult to accomplish the actual act of catching them after they've committed the crime. So extortion is one means by which this kind of direct transfer can be used. But there's another means. And this means is something that applies to people who have large sums of money but who don't want to pay taxes. Some things bear repeating. There are people who have large sums of money who do not want to pay their fair share of taxes. With this direct ability to transfer dollars from one person to another, transfer them digitally, transfer them at a later point into a currency that's tangible, this ability to do this also opens the door for them to not only avoid taxes, which is legal, but to evade taxes, which is illegal. It is lawful to avoid, illegal to evade. Many people in this country, I know it's a surprise to some people to know that there are some people who would evade taxes. But my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, there are people in this country who, if given the opportunity to pay zero taxes, they would pay zero taxes, notwithstanding the fact that they have large sums of money. Well, we believe, or I believe, that taxation is something that is necessary if I want the roads that I traverse, if I want the bridges that I cross, if I want the infrastructure that we have. Taxation is necessary. You don't pass an offertory. You don't pass an offertory for infrastructure. We need taxation to help us with hospitals. Sometimes we have to build the infrastructure with tax dollars to aid and abet people who are sick. Aid and abet might not be the best choice of words. Sometimes my diction is less than superb. Point is, we need tax dollars to do things to help people in this country that we have concluded are in need of help, and it's necessary to do so. That's what we do here in Congress. We pass legislation quite regularly to help people, and we've decided that this is a good thing to do. But you can't get the tax dollars from people who are evading because you don't know that they are actually in the business of evading until you can prove it, and you can't prove it if you can't catch them, and you can't catch them if they're making these direct transfers from one person to another or one entity to another. They're anonymous. I'm not saying that all of my colleagues have this in mind when they say they want privacy. Privacy is a big issue. They're saying that the government ought not know that I'm moving my money from one place to another, that that's my personal business. Well, it is your personal business until you break the law, and then the question becomes, if you're positioned to break the law, how do we prevent it? And the way you prevent it is to have a third entity involved in this transaction, a third entity, and that third entity can then have some means by which your anonymous position is known. If you go to the bank now and you want to withdraw funds, you can do so. It's your money. You can do so. But you can't withdraw it to send it to a terrorist organization. I think that's a pretty good thing. I don't want terrorists to be able to get money easily. In fact, I don't want them to get it at all. But if we make it easier for them to get it, this system will be utilized. Give you an example. I have it on good authority that the drug traffickers, there's a big issue in this country about drug trafficking. The drug traffickers, the people who are dealing with cross-border selling of guns, they use crypto methodologies. They use the crypto method to transfer the dollars involved. Well, we don't want them to be anonymous. We want to catch them. These are the people who are indirectly killing American citizens. So we want to capture them. We want to stop this. So they can transfer the guns, and once the guns are received, the money is transferred, and it's done from one person to another, and the government cannot seem to be able to find a way into that transaction such that the people who are committing the crime can be properly prosecuted. Pseudonymity, unknown persons, transferring large sums of money for unknown reasons. A third entity in this process that allows the money to get into it, digital dollars, we might call it a digital dollar, digital currency, gets into this third entity, and the identity is exposed. We know that you're transferring this huge...
My term, it's such an outrageous thing because I said it would happen. I didn't know it was going to happen that fast, but it just hit 50,000, and we did that in 1 year, not 4. S&P had just hit 7,000. They said that was even more impossible than the Dow hitting 50, and we did that in 1 year. So it was all done. Everything was going great. The economy was great. Oil prices were very low. Gasoline was dropping to, I mean, we had $1.99, $1.85. We had great everything. And I saw what was happening in Iran, and I said, I hate to make this excursion, but we're going to have to do it. And I actually thought the numbers would be worse. I thought that it would go up more than it did. But we're doing this excursion, and when it's completed, we're going to have a much safer world. And the Prime Minister agrees with me on this. She considers it to be terrible what Iran did. I think every country does, just about every country does. Iran is a serious threat to the world, to the Middle East and to the world. And everybody agrees with me. I think virtually every country agrees with me on that. So I wanted to put out that fire. And I said, you know, if I do that, oil prices will go up, the economy will go down a little bit. I thought it would be worse, much worse, actually. I thought there was a chance it could be much worse. It's not bad, and it's going to be over with pretty soon. We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their just about everything there is to obliterate, including leadership. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft equipment is gone. We're flying wherever we want, Pete. We have nobody even shooting at us. They have, I mean, and as you know, their leadership is gone. Their leaders are gone. They pick new leaders, they're gone. They pick new leaders, they're gone. And now they're looking for new leaders again. We can take out the island if anytime we want. I call it the little oil island that sits there, so totally unprotected. And we've taken out everything but the pipes. We left the pipes because to rebuild the pipes would take years for them to do. But we are, I would say, we are substantially ahead of schedule. And I had to do this. I call it an excursion. I had to take this little excursion and do something that no other president had the courage to do. And everybody wanted to do it, but they never had the courage to do it. And I don't blame them. I'm not blaming them. It was left to me, and we've done a great job. Our military is incredible. We have an incredible military. We have the strongest military in the world by far. We have the greatest equipment in the world by far. In fact, Japan buys our equipment, buys a lot of it, and we're honored by that. And that's one of the things we'll be talking. They want to buy a lot of the military equipment. So it's just an honor to have the Prime Minister. We've had a tremendous relationship. Okay.
Mr. President.
I think she's going to have to go first before you. Is that okay? Do you understand? It's very good. I'll tell you. I mean, it's so nice that we don't have to sit. No, it's very good. I haven't picked up your language, so the next time you come, I'll have your language mastered. All right, go ahead.
The war is almost over. Why is the Pentagon going to ask Congress for an additional $200 billion?
Well, we're asking for a lot of reasons beyond even what we're talking about in Iran. This is a very volatile world, and the military equipment, the power of some of this weaponry is unthinkable. You don't even want to know about it. Oh, you could end this thing in 2 seconds if you wanted to, but we are being very judicious. But we want to do. Don't forget, Biden gave away. I rebuilt the military in my first term. Biden gave away so stupidly to Afghanistan a lot. He didn't want to move it. He was too lazy, too stupid to move it. But it was a very small amount. It was a lot, but it was very small relative to what I purchased and what I built. We want to have vast amounts of ammunition, which we have right now. We have a lot of ammunition, but it was taken down by giving so much to Ukraine. They gave so much. Biden gave $350 billion worth of cash and military equipment to Ukraine, and he didn't rebuild anything. Fortunately, we have a lot. We have a tremendous, unlimited supply of what you'd call middle and upper middle armaments and military equipment, munitions, armaments, but munitions in particular. At the high end, we have a lot, but we're preserving it. We don't really need it. But we're building, our manufacturers of military equipment are building at a level they've never seen before, they've never done before. Pete's in charge of it with all of us, really. But Pete's been very strong on it. The general and Pete, myself, the whole group. And Raytheon is building 4 factories. Lockheed is building 5 or 6 factories, and they're building them fast because we had a very tough meeting with them. They were going out and buying back stock for $51 billion in one case. They spent $51 billion buying back stock. Now they're not allowed to do that. And they are now building a tremendous, there's never been anything like it, what's taking place right now. So we're in very good shape, but we want to be in the best shape we've ever been in. We were that, when I rebuilt the military, we were in great shape, and then Biden blew it, and he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything. And if you listen to the Democrats, they don't even want to have a military. Now you see how important it is. But we have the strongest military in the world. We have the best equipment. We make by far the best equipment. The other night, they had 114 rockets shot at a certain location. And out of 100 highly sophisticated rockets, out of 114 sophisticated rockets, every single one of them was shot down with our equipment, all our equipment. It's amazing, actually, how good it is. So we want to be sure, and it's a small price to pay to make sure that we stay tippy-top.
Mr. President, the Treasury Secretary this morning said there were defections among Iranian leadership. Are you aware of that, and is there anybody the U.S. can work with as a leader going forward?
Well, we have a man named the Treasury Secretary here, so maybe he wants to discuss it. Does anybody know? Do you know who he is? Central Casting.
Yeah, so Ed, we are seeing the defections at all levels as they're starting to sense what's going on with the regime. It doesn't get reported here in the U.S. very well, but we are trouncing them from the air, and the regime will probably collapse within itself. At Treasury, we've seen where they've wired their money out of the country. We're coming for that. We're going to get it back to the Iranian people.
Mr. President, seeing defections?
Israel.
There's a lot of military defections also. You have a lot of military defections in Iran. I don't blame them.
Thank you, Mr. President. Have you talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about attacking the oil and gas fields?
Yeah, I did. I told him don't do that, and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. We do. We're independent, but get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
And the last one, if I could, the Fed chairman told me yesterday that he plans to stay until a new Fed chairman is confirmed, and he also plans to stay on the board until the investigation into the Federal Reserve is done.
Well, he's under investigation because he's building a building for hundreds of billions of dollars more than it's supposed to cost. The building you see over there is under budget and ahead of schedule. That's the ballroom. The ballroom is a much bigger building. It's a much more complex building than what he's doing, and it's at a fraction of the cost. Something is going on, whether it's contractors. That's what I do best in the world. I build great buildings. I've always done it, and I build them under budget and ahead of schedule. They could have $4 billion. This is a renovation job for $4 billion. And if you look at the building, it's not even, I don't know if Kevin Warsh is ever going to be able to move into it. It's been under construction for years. It's the most expensive building ever built. Now, I know it's gross incompetent because I happen to think he's grossly incompetent. Today, certainly you should be lowering interest rates, all right? Certainly who would not lower them? But he's stubborn, and he's got Trump derangement syndrome. But a lot of people have that, you know. It's not a curable disease. But he's also building. He should be lowering rates immediately. But he won't do that because he's a stubborn, incompetent person. And that's a bad thing. You know, when you're stubborn and incompetent, I think it's the worst combination. And he's also not a smart person. But he's building a complex over there that's under his jurisdiction. He started it, and it's out of control. It's billions of dollars for a little building. I could have done that building and made it beautiful for $25 million. $25 million, and it would have been beautiful. Look what I've done at the White House, fixing it up. And I mean, the place was in bad shape. You see the floors and everything. It was in bad shape. I could have made that building beautiful for $25 million. They're spending $4 billion. All right. So there is criminality. Maybe it's with the contractor, but because I know more about contractors than any human being maybe that's ever lived. But that contractor is a very rich man. Whoever the contractor is, and we know, but whoever the contractor is an extremely rich man. He's going to make, I mean, he could make millions of dollars. I'm hearing numbers from $3 to $4 billion. That would make it the most expensive building on a square foot basis ever built in history. And you're not even building a building, it's a renovation. The exterior skin is staying, the steel is staying, the structure. So all I want to do is bring out to the public that this guy is an incompetent. He's a very incompetent guy. And he may be a dishonest guy, but somebody's dishonest because there's no way that building can be $3 to $4 billion.
Mr. President, on a straight of more news.
Thank you.
Please.
Mr. President, you just mentioned Japan.
This looks like one of your people right here.
Thank you.
Is he good or bad? Good. Is he a good reporter or bad? You know?
So.
Not all right. Looks like a nice guy. Go ahead.
Mr. President, you just mentioned Japan is stepping up. What kind of support do you expect from Japan in the future?
Look, I expect Japan to step up because, you know, we have that kind of relationship. And we step up for Japan. We have 45,000 soldiers in Japan. We spend a lot of money on Japan. And we've had that kind of a relationship. So I expect, I'm not surprised that they would step up. We don't need much. We don't need anything. I mean, honestly, we don't need anything from Japan or from anyone else. But I think it's appropriate that people step up. In the case of Japan, I hear they get more than 90% of their oil through the strait. So that's a big reason to step up. I mean, we've demolished, that country is close to demolished. The only thing is the strait. It's very hard. You could take two people and they could drop little bombs in the water and they're holding things up. We don't want that to happen. But honestly, Japan, China, Europe, parts of Europe, get a lot of their oil through the strait. We get none, practically. We're less than 1%. We don't have to be any percent. We don't even, I think we do it just to be nice. But we think of it, we don't use the strait. We're defending the strait for everybody else. And then in the case of NATO, they don't want to help us defend the strait, and they're the ones that need it. But now they're getting much nicer because they're seeing my attitude. They're getting much nicer. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's too late. You know, UK wants to send aircraft carriers now. And I said, I want the aircraft carriers before the war. I don't want them after the war is won. They want to send me aircraft carriers after the war. There's practically nobody to shoot at them. You know, their missile count is down, Pete. Maybe you could discuss it. By about 90-something%. The drones are way down, and the factories are being demolished. Maybe.
Yes, sir. Our missiles being shot are down over 90% since the beginning. One-way attack drones down 90% since the beginning, which is a reflection of overwhelming firepower. But you mentioned the most important part, Mr. President. Their defense industrial base. if you can't make more of it in the future, then you have a limited supply. And so we're going after all of their defense contractors that make all of their exquisite weapons and ensuring that even if they wanted to rebuild more launchers or more missiles, they couldn't in the future. And that's a level of devastation for their military that they've never seen before.
So we have, in literally 2 weeks, we've demolished their Navy, their Air Force. All technology is gone. All communication is gone. And all of the leaders are gone. Other than that, they're doing quite well. Okay, how about one more question for the Prime Minister? Let me pick a beautiful-looking person from Japan. A question for the Prime Minister. Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Oh, he doesn't believe he's beautiful.
Oh,
He sounded shy.
With
Go ahead,
people,
please.
of course, no, Japan and US are very good friends. But one question: why didn't you tell US allies in Europe and Asia, like Japan, about the war before attacking Iran? So we are very confused about we Japanese citizens.
Well, one thing, you don't want to signal too much. You know, when we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, no, you believe in surprise, I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right? Okay, one more for the Prime Minister.
Mr.
Please.
President.
Are you going to for the Prime Minister?
Yes,
Okay, go ahead for the
you
Prime
too.
Minister.
Thank you very much. Japan's DJ Press. Japan's biggest concern is China. Now they are giving us export control and very harsh terms to criticize us. So could you plan? Will you plan to bring up relationship between Japan and China while you are there?
Yeah. Well, I'll be going to China very quickly, but I think I'd really like to have the Prime Minister talk about China because I know they have a little bit of an edgy relationship, and I'd just like to know where it stands, how you're doing with China. So, please.
で日本はいつも中国に対してオープンです。会話はオープンにしています。それから冷静に対応しています。でとにかく米中関係も含めてですね、これが地域の安定、それから世界のサプライチェーン、これに貢献するものであることを願っています。日本は常にオープンです。
So first of all, Japan has been consistently open to dialogue with China. And also, second, we have been addressing our relations with China in a calm manner. And also, speaking of the U.S.-China relationship, my sincere hope is that the relationship will be something conducive for regional security and also ensuring the global supply chain in the world. Once again, I would like to reiterate that Japan has been consistently open to dialogue with China.
And I think we're going to have a great trip. The trip has been postponed for about a month and a half. It's been reset, and we look forward to it. And I'll be speaking Japan's praises when I'm in China with President Xi. But we're going to have some good talks today. And I think mostly about trade, because they want to do a lot of trade. They're a tremendous purchaser of our energy, our oil, gas from, in particular, Alaska. Because Alaska, believe it or not, is very close. It's much closer than any other source. It seems a little cold compared to, but it's just a short trip.
So that's something that we will talk after the press corps leaves.
We'll be discussing trade, and a lot of the talk will be about energy. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, President. Thank you, President.
Did you get a medal for that?
Thank you, sir.